So welcome everybody. We're just going to give everyone a few minutes, just a couple minutes to join because I see everybody's coming in from the waiting room. Thank you so much for joining us today for another Ask an Expert webinar. It's been so much fun hosting these every month, and of course we're always interested in ideas for new content that you guys want to hear and learn more about. So don't be shy. If you have anything that you would like to learn more about, feel free to post it in the chat anytime. People are still coming in, so we'll just give everybody another minute. I see, okay, so we're almost at 30 people. Hi, Nicole. So just a little housekeeping. Feel free to submit any questions you have in the chat or in the Q&A. We will answer those at the end. I have Elizabeth Pisano here from Winston Art Group, and very excited to have her here to share with everybody her knowledge around art, around how to navigate what you guys see sometimes in your clients' homes when they ask you, hey, what do I do with this artwork? And maybe they're not sure if it's important or if it's decorative. And she's going to dig into some of those things just to give you guys some knowledge to run with when you're navigating those conversations and looking at what's in people's homes when you're out on site and doing your day-to-day job. I want you guys to know that there will be 2 code words, and I'm going to give the first one in the beginning and the second one at the end. Anybody that wants a certificate of attendance for CEU, just email me afterwards and I will send that certificate out. Also, anybody who's registered will get the recording as well. So, with that, I am going to hand this presentation over to Elizabeth. So welcome, Elizabeth. And the first code word is painting.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me? We're having some audio issues before at the beginning of this. But my name is Elizabeth Pisano, and I am the Mid-Atlantic Director and a Fine Arts Specialist with Winston Art Group. The title of my presentation today is What Am I Looking At? The Basics of Fine Art Appraisals and Inspections. I'm here to share some helpful tricks that can help you hone your skills, hone your fine art inspection skills, and help you determine if further valuation services are needed. I'm just going to pop my video off just for this presentation. I'll turn it back on at the end. I want to start by giving a quick introduction on Winston Art Group and what we do. WAG is the nation's largest independent appraisal and advisory firm. We work with clients by offering a range of appraisal services, including retail replacement values for insurance and fair market values for financial planning, estate tax and planning, and charitable giving. We can also offer appraisals in the event of a divorce or a damage or total loss, among many other things. Our 3 core values are our expertise. We work with a network of over 75 specialists, each at the top of their fields. Our independence. We are objective and unbiased in our approach to valuation, as we are independent of any auction house, dealer, or gallery. And our confidentiality. We utilize banking level security and standards to maintain client confidentiality and data protection. So very quickly, while we are best known for our work with high-end fine art collections, and our name probably betrays us here, we can actually help clients with a broad range of collectibles, including but not limited to fine and decorative arts, classic cars, jewelry and watches, sports memorabilia, and luxury handbags. And that's really just the tip of the iceberg. Today's presentation will focus on fine art, but please let me know if you have a question on any type of object that looks valuable or collectible. I'm here to be a resource, and we love getting questions. So I'm very briefly going to talk about the basics of appraisals and why they matter. There are several instances where a formal qualified appraisal is required in order to prove the value of an object. These instances can range from securing insurance coverage for tangible assets to filing your estate tax return and many more. So what exactly is a qualified appraisal? A qualified appraisal is an opinion of value that allows an owner to understand the value of their asset. But a qualified appraisal must also be compliant with the Internal Revenue Service and the Uniform Standards of Professional Appraisal Practice Guidelines. It must be customized to the situation and needs, issued with a specific purpose, use, and value type. And it also must be undertaken by a qualified appraiser. And what exactly is a qualified appraiser? A qualified appraiser demonstrates veritable education and experience in valuing the type of property being evaluated. A qualified appraiser holds an appraisal designation from a recognized professional appraiser organization or has met minimum education requirements. And a qualified appraiser regularly prepares appraisals for which he or she is paid. The value types that you will typically see on an appraisal are retail replacement values for insurance and damage and loss, fair market values for estate tax and planning and gift and donation scenarios, and marketable cash value for collateral loans, and equitable distribution or family division. This next slide illustrates just how widely these value types can vary for a single object. Take this Willem de Kooning, for example. A recently assigned retail replacement value was $25 million, but the fair market value given was $17.8 million. And the auction estimate it was given when it sold at Sotheby's in 2021 was $7 to $10 million. Working with a qualified appraiser can help you and your clients clearly understand the value of what they own and arguably most critically, what they can expect to get if they decide to sell or need to file a claim. If anybody has more specific questions about these value types and their differences, I'm happy to go into more detail or answer questions at the end of this presentation. So on this slide, I've illustrated an overview of the appraisal process, but want to focus on the in-person or firsthand inspection because I think it is most relevant for this audience. In-person inspections are an important part of the appraisal process. While we can complete appraisals from photographs and information provided by the client alone, we often make the recommendation that we see the object firsthand. Other times, it is required that we do so. Seeing an artwork firsthand before value research begins can often provide clues to its importance and the value. I'll discuss how to look for these clues on the following slides. But first, I wanted to share some basic do's and don'ts when conducting an inspection of fine art. Do take unframed or site measurements, not framed. The unframed dimensions are what an appraiser needs to determine an accurate value. Do take many photographs, including detailed shots of any signatures, inscriptions, and labels on each work, and room shots if it looks like there are many valuable works in one place. Do inspect and photograph the reverse of a work if and only if it is easily accessible. Do ask for paperwork, provenance, and any information the family has. Even family stories can be helpful. Do bring a flashlight and a magnifying glass. Do conduct preliminary research in front of the object if you can. A Google image search can be your best friend. Don't handle or touch things unless you really need to, and always ask for permission. And don't unframe anything. Leave that to an expert. I often get asked how to tell the difference between an original work of art, a print, and a full-on reproduction. And I'll go through these basics in just a minute. On this slide, I have illustrated this image of a John Singer Sargent painting because when I was an auction house specialist, people would send me images of this painting all the time wanting to sell their version. But because the original belongs to the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston, I had to tell them each and every time that all they owned was a poster. So starting first with originals. First, an original work of art is a unique piece created by an artist. It is typically an image that the artist did not intend to be reproduced. To identify an original, you can check the reverse of the work, again, if and only if it is easily accessible. Labels on this painting by George Bellows that I've illustrated on this slide can help point you in the right direction. Check for signs of age. This can also often help determine if you are looking at an original work of art or a reproduction, which would likely look brand new. Look at the texture on the surface of the work. Original paintings, especially those on canvas, will have a tactile quality due to the application of paint. The paint may be thickly applied in some areas and thinly in others, creating depth and dimension. Prints and reproductions will appear much flatter. Also look for visible individual brushstrokes or lines made with other mediums like ink or pencil or charcoal that create the image. And finally, check the edges. Original works may have slightly uneven or irregular edges, reflecting the artist's hand rather than the result of a digitized or mechanical printing process. A print is a work of art created by transferring an image from one surface, like a wood block, a metal plate, or a stone, to another, usually paper, using pressure. Some printmaking techniques include woodcut, etching, and screen printing, among many others. Many artists, including George Bellows, as you see on this slide, worked in multiples. Prints, especially those produced in a limited edition, can often have substantial value. Prints typically have a smooth, flat surface with no visible brushstrokes. The image and colors on a print will appear uniform and even, with little variation in texture or tone. And prints can have a clean, straight boundary around the edges of the image. One good rule of thumb is to check the margins or the blank space below the image for a signature or other inscription. Often this will provide clues to the edition number, which is critical information when determining the value of a print. It is often written in pencil as well. So you'll see that right there, that says number 5. A printed reproduction is unlikely to feature any of this handwritten information. The primary difference between a repro and a print is that the reproduction is a copy made after an existing artwork, while a print begins with a unique image and the artist is typically involved in the reproductive process. The surface of a reproduction can also exhibit dots or patterns. Under magnification, you might see tiny dots or a grid-like pattern, which are characteristic of some mechanical and digital printing processes. A giclée is a specific type of reproduction that can look very realistic and often look like an original, so it is important to look for other signs. Here is where a Google image search can really be your best friend. If you search the image and many results come up, or you can buy a version on art.com, for example, you're probably dealing with a repro. If the search results directs you to a museum homepage and you see the painting belongs to a permanent collection of a public institution, you're probably dealing with a repro. If you do some initial research and you can't find any reference to the artist creating prints, you're probably dealing with a repro. On this slide, I've illustrated another work by George Bellows, Stag at Sharkey's, which is a very famous work by the artist that belongs to the permanent collection of the Cleveland Museum of Art. Reproductions of this image are widely sold, but by and large, repros are less valuable than original works of art and prints. The topic of reproductions can invite questions of expertise and authentication, so I'm going to touch on these points now. Though the art market has modernized in a lot of ways over the last decade, a lot of the internal mechanics remain incredibly traditional and hard to navigate. This is very true of confirming artist attribution and proving authenticity, without which it is virtually impossible to sell a work of art. I get asked all the time how issues of attribution are handled, and the short answer is there really is no one way. As such, you should be wary of anyone claiming to be an authenticator as a blanket statement. That's because some artists have committees that formally review works and give definitive answers on whether they are authentic or not. Others have one scholar recognized as the single authority. Sometimes there is more than one authority, and sometimes they don't agree with each other. This is famously true of Leonardo da Vinci. Still, other artists have published catalogues raisonné or annotated lists of all his or her known works. These publications are considered the ultimate authority on an artist, but even they are not foolproof. That's because scholarship can change over time. The painter Mary Cassatt is a good example of this. There was a catalogue raisonné of her work published in 1970 that is now largely considered outdated, because it includes many works that are now known to be inauthentic. A gallery undertook a project to revise this existing volume a number of years ago and excluded these inauthentic works, which meant that they then could not be sold or valued as by Mary Cassatt. When I was an auction house specialist, people would call us not infrequently and say something like, I bought this Mary Cassatt from you in 1980, and now I want to sell it. When the work was not included in the catalog Raison A, I had to be the bearer of bad news that their asset was likely now worth a lot less than they thought, and they had almost no recourse, as the guarantee period at most auction houses is only 5 years. All of this is to say, it's critically important to do the necessary research before the decision to sell is made or the estate tax return is filed, and working with a knowledgeable advisor can help you and your clients do this. An incredible resource is the International Foundation for Art Research, or IFAR, whose website lists published catalogs Raison A for thousands of artists and also provides information on reviewing committees and other authenticating bodies. Searching this site can be a great place to start if you think you may have stumbled upon an undiscovered Frida Kahlo or Georgia O'Keeffe. So I want to conclude this presentation by saying we want to help. There are many ways WAG can be a resource for you and your work. We will happily review any documentation or paperwork your clients may have to tell you whether or not something merits an appraisal or at least a closer look. We can also come to the client's home to take an initial look firsthand. Both of these services are usually complimentary. We also have an advisory team that can help clients navigate the complex processes of buying and selling fine art, and I'd be happy to provide more information on these services if there are specific questions. All of this is to say, please reach out. I want to be a resource, and I put my contact information here. So thank you very much for your time and attention today, and I am happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that information, Elizabeth. I've already gotten a request for the recording because there's so much in there to follow and remember. So we will be sure to get the recording out. I know also in the past there has been the request that we generate kind of like a recap of notes, which I know we can do with AI. So we're going to try and do that also with this so that we kind of send that little PDF doc out to everybody too. So like the highlights that you guys can have that as well. I know Hildy was asking specifically about that. So let's see with questions. Elizabeth, would you be able to either put your contact info back up on the screen, Julie's asking, or type it into the chat? You could do that too.
Here we go.
She didn't get it. There we go. Are you guys able to read that? Oop, it says
all right.
audience.
There's, you know what? I'll put it in the chat.
Yeah, go ahead and put it in the chat. And then I do have a few questions when you're ready. So we'll wait for you to get the info in there first. All right, awesome.
So I'm giving you my cell phone number, which is the best way to get in touch with me, and then my email address.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. One question is, what kinds of provenance should people look for if they're on site? And they, if it's sometimes we might not even be with the owner of the art. It might be like our moms or our dads, and we don't know much about it, and we find it in the attic, and they think maybe it's something.
So the image of the labels on the reverse of that George Bellows that I showed you briefly, labels are a really great way to help determine provenance, especially when you have nothing else, when you don't have paperwork, when you don't have documentation or invoices. Labels provide really interesting insight into the history of an object because you might have a gallery label on the reverse, you might have a label from a museum exhibition. They're basically like little hints that you can dig more deeply into. to help you trace the chain of provenance. And I should say that people sometimes get confused as to what we mean when we say provenance. Provenance actually refers to a very specific, it has a specific definition. It really is the history of the ownership of the painting. So that's what we're trying to track. If you look in an auction catalog or on a gallery website or something like that, that's really what people want to see.
Perfect. Okay. And then there was a question about, oop, going back in these. Hold on one sec. I think I just scanned right past it. Okay. How can we begin an introductory inspection when, like, A, we should not remove the piece from the frame, and B, we're not supposed to touch the piece? And are you guys available in Atlanta area?
Okay, so lots of questions. So photography is a really great place to start. So just you can take as many images as you can of the work. I said don't unframe it because especially a work on paper, it's just very likely that you could damage the piece if you try to take it out of the frame. And to do an initial review of something, we probably don't need to see it out of the frame. So take as many pictures as you can. We always need overall shots. If the back is accessible, like if it's a small piece that you can easily take off the wall, or if it's leaning up against something and you're able to kind of lean it forward, we love to see an image of the reverse. We're always looking for detail shots of signatures. That's really important too. So I would say that those are like the critical starting points. I mean, I always tell people to just use your best judgment, right? Like if you feel comfortable moving something slightly so you can get a better look at it and you've asked permission and the owner has said that it's okay, that is something that can happen. But if the piece is quite large or looks really, really delicate, like just use your best judgment. You don't need to do an exhaustive inspection in order to come to us with information that we can use to determine best next steps. I do not have a counterpart who's based in Atlanta, but I have a counterpart who covers the Southeast for Winston, and she oversees our relationships in Atlanta. So it's very easy for us to get there.
Perfect. Okay. And Janet says we are sometimes hired to do complete home cleanouts, and this may include hundreds of items. What is your recommendation for navigating such a large quantity of unknowns?
Mm-hmm. So we do a lot of that work too, because people will come in and say, we need you, and they're not totally sure what they need us for. So a lot of times what we'll end up doing is providing an appraisal of the most valuable works in the collection, and then helping with clear out services if necessary for the lower value things. That's where a complimentary walkthrough can really come in handy. Somebody from Winston can come to the home and get the lay of the land, get a better understanding of what the person was collecting, what they were acquiring, and help determine even initially where the value really lies. That's why I also mentioned taking room shots, because we're often able to evaluate, what needs a closer look based on those general like room content type photographs.
Okay, perfect. All right. Um, so another question is, can if a piece of art is found that might have some value, could its value be different depending on the location? Like if they find something in Atlanta, could it be worth more in New York? Like, does location matter?
That's an interesting question. Location does matter with regard to sale sometimes. Um, the center of the fine art world, certainly in the United States, is New York. So if you have something that is really going to benefit from a more global audience and that type of exposure that a major auction house can give it, then I would say it's probably worth the cost of having it sent to New York, because you'll recoup those costs and what you ultimately are able to in the sale price. If it's a work of art by an artist whose market is hyper local or regional, sometimes it doesn't matter. Like you sending it to New York probably wouldn't matter because the buying audience is where it was painted and where it still exists. There are lots of little regional markets throughout the US. A really good example is the market for Western American paintings. Obviously, the big names, Remington, Russell, those artists sell in New York sales all the time, but there are a lot of regional houses that specialize in that type of material, and their collector bases are closer nearby. So like a Jackson Hole, a Scottsdale, even Heritage to a certain extent, Coeur d'Alene. So it really just kind of depends. And part of our advisory services is advising clients on what the best market is so that they know how to maximize their return for the object that they have.
Okay. And do you value a variety of art or only paintings and prints? For example, sculptures, art, pottery, or pottery, porcelain. This is Judy asking.
Yeah. So obviously, I kept the conversation pretty limited today. I myself, I should have said this, am an American painting specialist. I'm also an appraiser in this type of material. But our firm is very, very broad in what it can handle. So anything really, like absolutely sculpture, absolutely ceramics, Persian rugs, miniatures, absolutely. It is rare that we are presented with an object that we don't have a specialist who can assist with.
Awesome. And then she asked, are most auctions online? Are most of the online auctions bringing a national audience, or is it international?
That's a great question. It does depend. Most auction houses do have an online presence now, and so that has certainly broadened their audience. Certainly the major houses that do online only sales are getting people from everywhere. I think that's the primary outcome of digitizing auctions, is that the collector base and people paying attention and accessing these sales has just become much, much broader. Is there a rep in the Washington, D.C. area? I see this question, and I will tell you that I am the rep in the Washington, D.C. area. So I'm the Mid-Atlantic director, but I'm based in DC. So I'm your girl.
Perfect. Awesome. What happens if they have to ship something? Are there scenarios where they might have to ship something for you guys to inspect it? Or if they have to ship art, like, is there anything they should know to navigate that the correct way?
Yeah, so we do not ask that clients send things to us to be appraised. We either can do it from photographs, which I mentioned, or we go to the client. It just logistically that makes a lot more sense. In terms of fine art shipping, if something is going to be sold, most of the time an auction house will require that the work be sent to them so that they can evaluate it in person and fully catalog it, have it photographed, in which case shipping does become necessary. Typically, the chosen sale venue will work with you to come up with some shipping options, or you can do it independently. But typically, I advise that you work with the auction house to determine what the appropriate shipping option is.
Okay, and can you recommend best places to sell pieces if you do evaluation or appraisal? Will you help with that?
That is part of our advisory services, yes. So we can either, depending on the value of the object, we'll either offer like a full service plan for you, where we handle all of the logistics of selling something from beginning to end. So first is identifying what the best sale venue is. And then once the venue is chosen, we handle all of the administrative and logistical components of selling something. So we oversee the shipping for you. We make sure you get paid on time. We negotiate the consignment terms for you. That's really like white glove full service. If the value of the object in question is maybe a little bit more conservative, we might just say like, hey, we're not the best fit to do everything, but here are some recommendations of people that you should contact directly to discuss sale.
Okay. And is there a cheat sheet with with tips that that Winston Art Group is ever able to send out, like just little tips? She's asking to determine print, repo, Gicle.
I
Um,
can put one together. I should say these are not the hard and fast rules. These are just based on my experience of doing this for over 15 years and being in a lot of homes and looking at a lot of objects. So there is no foolproof method. How you get better at this is just to stand in front of things and to look closely. If anything, I also should have put in this, really trust your instincts. If something feels special, it's worth having a second set of eyes on it. And certainly, please, we hope you come to Winston Art Group. We love seeing things. We love to be helpful. So it's never a burden on us.
okay, there's a question. What are typical costs for appraisals and auction fees? Are auction or consignment fees negotiable?
Yes. So starting with the appraisal fee, I can talk about our fee structure, which is we charge on an hourly basis. So if you or one of your clients is to work with us, we would get an initial sense of the scope of the collection or what the project is going to look like. We put together a proposal that outlines basically how much time it's going to take for three main components. One would be the in-person inspection, if one is necessary. Two is what we call the research period. So how long it would take a specialist to actually research the artist and the market, identify the appropriate sale comparables, and then assign a value. And then we always build in time for project management too, just to be able to produce and finalize the appraisal report. So we would give you a range of time for each one of those three components. Our standard rate is $400 an hour. We're always very happy to give any referrals from you. Our preferred rate, which is a little bit less. Auction consignment terms, I no longer work for an auction house, but I can tell you their terms are always negotiable. Their fee structure is a little bit more complicated. I don't have to get into it in too much detail, but on the standard level, typically an auction house is charging like 10% of the hammer price that is deducted from the net towards to the seller.
Okay, perfect. Um, see if there's any other questions here in the Q&A. I think that's it. I think those are all the questions. I do want everybody to know that the second code word is WAG. WAG stands for Winston Art Group. And I will put my email for you guys to send those code words to get your certificate if you would like to. Just double check one more time. Does anybody have any other, one other question. Okay, to whom do we point clients in need of a referral, or do we just contact you, Elizabeth?
You know what? You're absolutely welcome to contact me, and then depending on what the project is and where they're located, I might loop in a colleague. But I'm happy to be the point of contact.
Okay, perfect. Excellent. And you guys all have her contact info. She put it in the chat, but this is recorded. Anybody that is here is going to get a copy of the recording. And I can also connect you with her contact info if something happens and you can't find it. So just ask me also. And then everybody's saying thank you, and it was a great webinar. So yes, thank you, Elizabeth, for coming and sharing this information. I know that it is really helpful for so many people that are helping their clients with estates and collections and downsizing projects. And for anybody that is here today from NAPO and you're going to be at the summit next week, I will be there. So will Cesar. So hope to see you guys there. Stop by our table if you are around. And we look forward to seeing you. And thank you all. And thank you, Elizabeth, again. And I hope everybody has a good evening. And that is it.
Thank you so much.
All right. Thanks, guys.